So I thought this would be a little fun Christmassy type video to do. We're going to go ahead and rank all of the Christmas servants that have come out in FGO. And really, those are just the Christmas free-to-play servants, right? Just compared to one another. But, you know, I thought it'd be a little cute thing to do for Christmas, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy it as well. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. If you guys enjoy FGO content, I'm on that daily FGO content grind. A like and subscribe would greatly help out the channel. There's a ton of links and stuff you can peep in the description down below. But because this is a more tier list discussion video, we ain't got time to do all that YouTuber intro. We just gotta move right into the meat and potatoes of this video. And one of the funny things about comparing all of the Christmas servants is, I guess what I'll just go ahead and do, I don't really want to spoil, or just not spoil, but I guess lollygag around. I literally think this is kind of how it goes. Like, I literally think it's like every year they just like slowly start getting better, and this is how the tier list would look like. If I'm being 100% honest, this is how I think it would look, and I'll go ahead and explain why I think it looks like this. Because we start off with like Saber Alter, right? Just generic meme kind of servant, right? Probably didn't expect it to be taken very seriously. I mean, this skill is, I mean, it's a decent heal, and I mean, the star gen is nice, I suppose, but, you know, you're not really popping her for that. This is still the Dookie Instinct, probably needs to get upgraded to a battery, and then this is the Mana Burst we all know and love, although not at 50% for some reason. And then really the only saving grace for her is that she refunds a little bit of her NP, so if for whatever ungodly reason you're able to get to her NP, you know, you can actually do some pretty good damage with it and refund 10% back. And that's kind of why she's at the bottom, because I don't think she was intended to actually be used a whole lot, right? I think she was just kind of like, oh, hey, here's like a fun meme Saber Alter servant, right? Like, hey, people aren't going to expect her to be meta or anything. But then people were like, oh, we really like the Christmas servants. So then they came out with what I just see as like marginally better Saber Alter, right? So they were like, okay, so we keep this skill, but we reduce the heal just by a little bit, right? But then we give her own 20% battery. Screw the stars. Nobody cares about the stars. They're stupid. No one cares about them. 20% battery. That's where it's at, right? So she's a little better because of that. Then they gave her a slightly better buster buff, at least some form of survivability, and they kept the normal Jolter demerit that like the big adult Jolter has. And then when they came to her NP, they're like, and then we're gonna make her NP just a little support based, but I mean, it's very minimal support, and you have to have this go first, otherwise you won't get the effect of this. Honestly, I think that probably should have at least lasted 2 turns, but yeah, like, so they literally just like, okay, here's slightly better Saber Alter, right? Because we're going to give her an immediate 20% battery and a way to keep herself alive. And then after these two, right, I think these two are like kind of memes, right? You know, because of the whole like Saber Alter and John Alter meme that we have going on in FGO. Then we get to like Santa Altera. And Santa Altera, I'm like, this is where you actually start getting like a legitimately pretty decent servant, right? Because they take the battery that they gave to Lily, and now they made it a targetable battery, right? And they keep the star gen thing. I don't know, I don't get the star gen thing, but a 30% star gen really popping off. But they turned it into a targetable skill, right? Which is just better than it just being a self battery, because now it's just infinitely more useful, because now you can put it on anybody. They gave her the ability to massively gas up somebody's NP damage for 1 turn. Some pretty decent crit damage, probably should have been 3 turns if we're being honest. And then if for whatever reason you wanted her to turn into the main DPS, she got Pierce Invincibility, Star Weight, and then a little bit of defense. And then her NP, I think just for that, just dropping stars is very, very solid, and it has 10 hits. So she became like a really good star Jenny type servant. You could also like plug suit into a team, and she would have some pretty good utility because she would give somebody a decent battery, a little bit of star gen, a little bit of crit damage to actually hit with the stars that she was going to be providing herself, and then a big NP damage buff as well. So she was like the first of the group to kind of actually become pretty relevant. I think Quetzalcoatl was a bit of a step back, because like you could probably argue that she's better than Santa Altera. It's just my only issue is that they cut out the battery from her, right? So like they were kind of working up with like 10% battery on NP, 20% battery for free, targetable 20%, and then 1 arts card that you're really relying on getting crits on, but then she specifically takes the stars away from her arts cards to not get crits with them, which you really need a crit on that arts card to maximize the amount of NP you're getting. Everything else she does, I think, is actually an upgrade. I think everything else is really good. This is a very strong charisma. I don't know why it's not 21%, because the normal Quetzalcoatl is 21%, but we still take it. The 10 stars per turn just makes us a really strong charisma. Like, this is insanely good. And then she still keeps the goofy star gen skill, but then she also, instead of charging their battery, gives them a pretty decent amount of star weight for one turn, which I do think is a step back from getting a 20% battery. And then, you know, they gave her this pretty decent skill, which if she had a battery, like if she had like a targetable 20% battery, or God forbid this was like a targetable 30% battery with the star weight, I think she'd be head and shoulders better than like Altera and whatnot. And then this wouldn't be as big of a deal right here, because it's like, well, she only has the one arts card, and sure, she is really reliant on getting a crit on that arts card, but at least she would have like a 30 or 20% battery that she could give to herself. But in a vacuum, this skill is good, right? Because that helps her with her buster crits. And then her overcharge on her NP is pretty good. Giving the entire party crit damage, I think, is really solid, starting at least at 30%. This is a little wiggity whack because she only has 4 hits on her NP. Like, they kind of wanted her to be like Emiya or Iskandar or Raiko, who can drop a lot of stars on their NP, but they all have really high hits on their NP with like the good star weights, or not star, but the star gen. So I don't really know what they were doing for Quetzalcoatl. She's not bad, but I think she was a step back. And for when you look at Altera, then you have Nightingale and Karna. And this is a little debatable because they're almost like different servants. Karna over here is like a DPS servant, right? Like, you're probably just going to use him to beat the tar out of somebody, right? Whereas Nightingale can be a DPS, or she can kind of be like an upgraded version of Santa Altera over here, because she has the ability to remove a buff from the enemy, debuff cleanse the entire party, well, at least the latest debuff, and then she brings back the really solid heal. Then over here, she has like a pretty, I don't know if I would count this as like an upgrade to Quetzalcoatl's charisma, but I do think it's still like at least as good, because it's providing the same attack buff, and instead of 10 stars every turn, you're getting 30% crit damage for 3 turns, which again is still pretty solid. Being able to just slap a guts on somebody is absolutely insane. And then she takes the 30% NP damage that Altera had, but she makes it 3 turns and makes it really hard for the enemy to remove buffs on that ally for 3 turns, just flat 3 turns. And then, you know, she just has like, I would say like a pretty decent NP, right? Like decent offensively. Like, if this was like removing their defensive buffs, I think it'd be absolutely crazy, but it's offensive buffs, which is probably like the worst version of buff removal. I mean, it's still decent, but, you know, not the best. And then reducing their defense though, like if you're going to use her as like kind of a tag out person, you can maybe have her fire her NP, lower their defense, and then, you know, smack them with a second NP. But really, you kind of want to use her as like just a buffed version of Santa Altera, which is kind of why I have Karna above her, right? Because even if you know, are just only using him as a DPS, he still brings back the targetable NP gauge that he can give somebody. And then this time, he just makes them straight up immune to buffs for 3 instances, which is pretty insane. You guys know that I like it when it's just 3 turns flat, but 3 instances is still really good. Like, it's better than like the one-time instance that a lot of servants will give. So this is crazy. Like, you bring this back. Giving batteries is one of like the best things you can do in the game. It's what makes servants like Castoria, Scotty, Merlin, you know, Waver, Reigns, like super top tier, when you can give just battery back to people. It's just they do it at a much higher clip than Karna does. Well, except for Merlin. Merlin gives 20% of the NP over time, but you guys know what I mean. And then, aside from that, he's just a really good offensive servant, right? He has like the 30% meme here, but then with his overcharge down here, you know, he makes it a 50% mana burst, right? He's getting 30% quick here, 20% there, turns it into a mana burst when he fires NP. This is whack. I don't know what they're doing there, but overall, very solid. Like the 50% crit damage for 3 turns, that's Waver's crit damage buff that he just gives himself for free. Very good survivability, very good star weight on his quick cards, which you would want because, you know, he is a quick servant. And then he gets the Scotty insane 100% quick crit damage, right? So if you're using him with double Scotty, he has 300% quick crit damage for that turn. So it's kind of why I see him as like a little bit of an improvement over her. I think she's like better than Altera overall. I think Altera having the battery is a huge boon to her, but it just seems that like everything else that she does kind of edges her out against Altera, with like the really strong charisma, the ability to give a guts to somebody, having their buffs actually stick on them, you know, all that kind of good stuff. And then Karna just seems like he's a step above that. I don't know if I would want to put him up here, actually. Like, I don't know if maybe I want to do that. I'm not sure where I want to actually put him. I do think he's quite good, though, so I actually might stick him up there. But then finally, I mean, you guys know that I love my free-to-play support, so when they put out Santa Martha and they just made her a really strong support, I was like, yeah, she's without a doubt the best, you know, Santa card that's come out, it's like, so far. Like, giving somebody a big chungus 30% attack buff, a decent max HP buff to make them a little bit more chunky, and then giving them a 20% NP gauge, so like rolling in the best of a lot of the skills that the other Santas had into one, really strong. Then just sealing the entire enemy party's NP for one turn is insane. Just being like, nope, you guys ain't doing that to me. Like that's really good on a support type servant, and she reduces their defense by 20% to further buff up the damage that your allies are going to be doing. And then for that ally, you can then increase their star weight by a stupid dummy thick amount, and then give them at least 10 stars to play around with. And then while I do wish this part was also targetable, the 30% battery here, it is still good that she gets the 30% gauge to herself, because it's going to help her get to her NP. Because, you know, if you look at her NP gain up here and then her arts cards, like, they're not the best, but they're not terrible, right? But, you know, if you look at her NP, this NP is really, really strong, because then it gives the entire party 20% attack, meaning the person that you gave this to is getting a 50% attack buff for 3 turns, because they're both 3-turn buffs. So that's insane. And because she's a free NP5, you're giving them a 50% buff to demonic, divine, or undead people, which divine and demons, divine is very common, demons are somewhat common, and then undead is, I mean, those are like trash mobs, right? So that's pretty good. Then a further 20 stars, you know, so again, this dude over here is just having a field day, right? Because then they're gonna have like 30 stars. If you pop this and then give this to them on the next turn, sheesh, you are having a fun time. And then, you know, HP, who cares? But yeah, like, she's a very, very solid free-to-play support. You know, very much in the same vein as like Da Vinci Lily, right? I think she's really, really strong, and I think she's definitely the best Santa servant that we've seen so far. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. This is kind of what I'm looking at when it comes to the Santa servants. I do think they all got better. I think Quetzalcoatl was debatably worse than Santa Altera over here. I just think the battery really helps her out a lot, and I think she kind of has some issues or like some conflicts with being able to gen her NP, and like how you really want to crit on the arts card, but she specifically gives star weight to her buster cards, which is very counterintuitive. And then even though Nightingale drops the battery, I think she does enough extra now with a lot of her skills just all being very, very strong to make up for it, even though I would have loved to see her still have the battery. And then you have like just a really strong DPS servant, right, in Santa Karna that like I even use. Like, I use Santa Karna because he's just really strong. Like, he's just such an oppressively like good servant, and he's just like, again, he's kind of like Saber Lance a lot in that he's like really dummy easy to use. And then you have a free-to-play support servant, which, you know, when we get free-to-play support servants, we're definitely eating. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What do you guys think of the list? Let me know who you guys think this best Santa servant is, and then let me know also who your favorite Santa servant is, because I might have to go with Nightingale, dude. Because I mean, let's be real, like, you know, we're all looking at that 4th Ascension, we're all thinking the same thing. Let's not cap around these parts. You know what I'm saying? But with all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice Christmas, even though this might be going up the day after Christmas, depending on if another surprise video goes up. But yeah, either have a nice Christmas or enjoy your day after Christmas. But with all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace, guys.